Welcome back to Shadowboxing. My name is Tibor and I'm with Robin Chappell. Let's continue the discussion. Robin, voluntary euthanasia is something which I heard, it's your fascination.
Look, it's certainly something I'm concerned about. It's been a very interesting experience trying to introduce legislation, which I've done twice now. Should I get back into Parliament, I'll look how the land lies and make some decisions whether I'll have another go or not. What I find is really rather interesting in the politics completely is that 86% of the Perth metropolitan area support voluntary euthanasia. The problem comes down to the fact that it's difficult for parliamentarians to come up with a position that might ostracize some of their voters.
Really?
Absolutely.
So what, the remaining 14% they are afraid of?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also an issue that people want to deliberate properly over. Unfortunately, quite often there is a very, very vocal minority on this issue.
Then where is that coming from? From the professions or from the doctors, hospitals?
It basically, not so much the doctors, though the medical fraternity is concerned that it might put them in an awkward position. What we tried to do is to craft legislation which is only dealing with terminally ill people. It wasn't legislation that we looked at in terms of broadening the idea of voluntary euthanasia, but one that restricted it. And we were roundly criticised to a degree for having very, very restrictive legislation at one level.
Yes.
We found ourselves in the middle of an argument where at one level I was being criticised for being too conservative, and by the conservative side I was being criticised for being too sort of left. But the issue comes is that the majority, as I say, of the Perth metropolitan area support it. When you actually get out into the country, it's almost 90%. So everybody supports it, but I've tried to work through this. One would assume by natural selection that our parliamentarians would somehow represent
the people's wish.
The people's wish, or at least respect, or not respect, but represent by sheer the majority view, but they don't.
Why is
quite
that?
Clearly, I think the church and the influence of the church has a lot to do with this. We do have people who firmly and rightfully so do believe in a right to life view of the world, but there is no compunction if you're dealing with voluntary euthanasia for anybody to accept voluntary euthanasia. It is an independent individual's choice. I was really rather annoyed with Colin Barnett because both political leaders at the time, Colin and Eric Ripper, said we will allow our two major parties to have a free vote, a conscience vote on the issue.
But they did not.
But just prior to that vote, Colin Barnett came out and said, I can assure you, no thinking liberal would ever vote for voluntary euthanasia. Mm-hmm. Now, I know that I had a number of people on the liberal side of politics who were supportive. So Colin Barnett coming out and making that statement was a shot across their bow, basically sort of saying, don't you dare support this legislation. If you do, you're going to be answerable to me. And so I think that indeed tainted the debate. I think it would have still been close. I'm not sure it would have still got up, but I'm sure it would have been a much closer vote had he not given that edict.
So what was the number? Being the numbers?
I think off the top of my head it was, I think we had about 12 to about 22, something like that.
So quite the opposite of the public's opinion.
Oh yeah.
Which been surveyed.
Yeah. Oh look, and I think it is very much a conscience vote. and I think that's very, very valid. It has no political agenda to it. No green agenda, no liberal agenda, no Labour agenda. This legislation has been introduced in a number of states by different people from different political parties. So it's not tied to politics, it's actually tied to conscience. And I respect conscience, but I'm afraid that what we saw in the result was not necessarily that of conscience, but of fear of ostracizing or fear of upsetting people with significant influence.
Now, uranium mining.
Yeah, look, uranium mining has no place in a modern society. It doesn't lead to any good at any level. Now, for example, that pencil's a lump of uranium. It's not going to hurt me, it's not going to hurt you, I can hold it in my hand, it's fine. So let's dispel a myth to start off with. But, having said that, we're referring to beta or gamma radiation coming out of that. It's not really going to harm us. What it also has in it is alpha radiation. Now alpha, my skin, my epidermis, stops it, not a problem. Grind that up into powder and ingest or inhale it in any form of dust, and that is radioactive for 250,000 years, and it's in me. And so there is evidence in France and in America that you'll get a cohort of cancers arising out of the ingestion or inhalation of alpha-emitting particles.
Yes.
After a 10-15 year period. The Whitnum scenario. It's very, very similar to asbestosis. So that's a worker...
the silent killing.
Yeah, so that's the worker immediate health problems. When it comes to mining uranium, it's one of the highest users of water of any mining industry. So you can extract uranium a number of different ways, but you need vast quantities of water. When you actually mine the ore, you've only got about, in Western Australia, about 1% of the ore is actually uranium. So you've got a huge waste pile. 99% of the material is waste, and it is equally as radioactive from an alpha perspective as the ore that you're extracting out. So once you've mined it, you've got to put that waste somewhere. Well, that waste is then toxic for a very, very long time.
But that waste was exist before, so it was in the
underground.
Underground, yes.
Now we put it on the surface, which means it's movable by wind, rain.
It couldn't go back underground?
It can. There is one problem.
Yes.
Is that when you actually mine something, as I'm mining a commodity, the commodity expands by somewhere around about 7% when you actually mine it. So you pull something out of the ground, you stir it up, it becomes 7% larger. So you can't actually put it all back underground. Also, miners to a large degree consider that immensely expensive to actually take the material out, pile it up somewhere else, and then bring it back and put it in the hole. So that usually doesn't happen. So we've got the legacy problem. Then we've actually got the material. We've got the transportation, the travel, and the eventual turning of that material into a suitable element to be used in nuclear reactors. Well, that 1% we've taken out, we take it overseas and we improve it. And we only actually use around about 7% of that 1% as fissile material. So we've got another waste stream being developed there, which
should come back.
Which should come back, but people don't like transporting this stuff at this stage.
But you probably heard about an alternative. It's still not uranium.
The thorium.
Thorium.
Yep. Thorium reactors.
And we got lots of thorium in here.
Yeah. And we've got lots of thorium in India, places like that.
What do you think, why people not start to use thorium?
The unfortunate thing is that there have been lots of experiments with different types of reactors over time.
Yes.
Thorium reactors have never really worked. Otherwise, India would be building thorium reactors.
But that was one thorium reactor in the United States, which was working until the government stopped the working reactor. Right. So what do you think was the motivation?
Well, the motivation there was that whilst it was working, it wasn't actually producing power. It was just an experimental reactor. And the problems with that reactor became manifold.
The thorium reactor couldn't melt down. It could not explode. It's got the advantage because it stops itself.
That's the theory.
That's the physical theory, yes,
Yeah.
or the chemist
The problem
theory.
is they've tried to get these things working, and they've cost too much, and they have never functioned in any way.
But
Now,
Australia last year, this year, invested in
there is a
thorium
comment
reactor.
that thorium reactors don't produce fissile material.
That's correct.
Well, they do, unfortunately, because part of the process, you can take some of the product that comes out of a thorium reactor and then enhance that into a fissionable material. It's not a direct, it's not a plutonium.
So not a direct product or byproduct, but you can manipulate that waste into.
Yeah, and certainly we're firmly...
But definitely not producing that much as the uranium reactors.
Oh no, it certainly wouldn't. But I mean, the key issue here is that any country that can get hold of a reactor has the ability to make nuclear weapons. Now,
and they do.
Oh, they do, absolutely. And therein lies a problem, because currently we've got a situation where we've had the Cold War, where both the Soviet Union and the Americans had nuclear weapons, and they were able to balance each other out. As we start moving into countries like Iran and places like this, and we know Israel's got nuclear weapons, there is always going to be the risk that somebody will start playing with nuclear weapons in a way that isn't going to suit the rest of the world. And once we've actually started playing with nuclear weapons, it's very easy for this whole issue to escalate completely out of control. I would not like to see a nuclear weapon ever used again. The two we used in Nagasaki and Hiroshima were the start of a race that we shouldn't have been having.
Robin, thank you very much for coming on Shadowboxing.
It's a pleasure.
It was nice talking to you, and I hope you're coming back next week, same channel, same time, Shadowboxing.